All right, everybody, it is enough to keep going on the E2KG network. This is our podcast for the week of December 17th. So I don't give a number to it. Technically, I think we are hitting number 74, but tonight we are going to be hitting our games of 2018. So this is the end of the year. We've had a great year. This has been it's been a good year for games. I think we'll talk about it more tonight, but over the course of tonight, we're going to be visited by the ghost of gaming past, the ghost of gaming present, and probably not even. We'll wait on the ghost of gaming future until 2019 because we've got plenty to talk about. So tonight is going to be an extra long podcast on the E2KG network here. We've got a lot of categories to cover. We've got 8 categories to cover. Last year we had 10, so we mixed some things around. We've got some good conversation. We've added a couple, dropped a few. As in all things E2KG, we're constantly evolving, and sometimes it feels like we're revolving around the same things as well. But tonight I am joined by the entire crew, joined by Osiris Prime, Swissguard, Agasicles, Stamus, and we do have an E2KG guest on here as well. So I want to turn this over and allow you to introduce yourself, and where can our viewers find you on the E2KG network?
So I usually do the TV shows with Agasicles Thomas and the entertainment crew. And our podcast right now series is called It's Another Thing. So we're finishing up The Gifted. We still have one episode which went on break. And then once we come back, The Gifted will finish in 2019. And then we're also planning to do Punisher Season 2. So that's the plans for It's Another Thing. You can also find me on Twitter at comicbookguy90. So, yeah.
Excellent. Well, Dave, thank you for joining us tonight. Thank you for gifting us with your presence. So I know you were feeling a little under the weather, so we're gonna use you to kind of tease out a couple categories early in the show, and also to give the viewers a little bit of some of those categories that are coming in the second half of the show. So since you're sick, Dave, one of our categories on the E2 on Enough to Keep Going here is game most likely to play when you're sick. So for you, what is that game? Whether it's right now or whether it's what's that comfort game for you that you're most likely to play when you're sick?
Yeah, so Super Mario Odyssey is like my stay at home, gonna play something while I'm sick. But usually when I'm sick, I'm probably gonna sleep more than play video games.
Well, so that's good. Good to know. All right. The Odyssey, there's a lot there. You could pick it up and play just a little bit here and there. But Odyssey also is one from last year, and most of what we're going to be talking about tonight is games for this current year. But we do have a good category that falls right into here is games that have a new lease on life or a best ported game. So this doesn't, so Dave, is there something in your playlist or something in your playlist over the course of this past year where it's a remaster, it's a port, something that really jumped out at you that you want to highlight?
Yeah, I haven't played it, but I read Wolfenstein ported onto the Switch is pretty good. So I will highlight that one.
Excellent.
It's one of the most powerful games on the Switch, but it does a good job.
Good. That is good. Yeah, right. I mean, I've played it on the Xbox, and I know that we have a number of people here that have also played it, and I know that Agasicles has it on Switch. So yes, we've got some people here that are that have not overlooked this game with Wolfenstein 2. But we do have another category coming later in the show, which is our hidden gem, our most overlooked game. So, Dave, is there something that seems to fly under other people's radar, but you have really enjoyed it this year and you want to take a minute to give a shout out to it?
Yeah, I would definitely say Fist of the North Star, I think, was underlooked. I feel one of the strongest points for Sony is its anime style based, games, and that's just one of the ones that I feel like American audiences overlook. But I think that like a friend of mine had it, and I think it's pretty fun. And like I'm not really into that anime because it's pretty so we're like gory or violent and all bloody and all that. But the game's like pretty fun. It's just kind of chill.
Cool. That's great. I can tell you that that is, again, the Fist of the North Star game is not one that's going to pop up later in this show. So I'm glad that you had a chance to highlight it and give a shout out to it. So finally, we're wrapping up our podcast at the end of tonight, and we don't necessarily go by kind of standard categories in terms of game of the year, but for us, one of the big ones is the life of the party. What's that game that you've had the most fun with during 2018?
Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Pokemon Go.
Okay, so it's a combo, right? Have you done any transferring back and forth between
Oh
the?
yeah.
Okay,
I mean, I'm usually out there every community day, every time there's big raids. Do a lot of transferring. Spend 20 hours going for shiny Mewtwo. Um, I mean, I like it, and I think that Pokemon is taking it back. Definitely for 2019. They got like two big movies coming. And I don't know if I'm going to get the 2019 game because I really like the Let's Go style.
cool. That's great. No, I can tell you, and I'll tell our listeners that Let's Go is going to pop up here in a number of different categories over the course of tonight. So I'm glad to know that that also has been high on your list this year. So Dave, before we send you off and give you a chance to rest your voice and rest up, I want to ask you: is there something on your radar for 2019, right? You've had a lot of fun with Pokemon Go and Pokemon Let's Go in 2018, but what are you looking forward to for 2019? Is there a game that you want to put on some people's radar here?
Yeah, I'd like to highlight Killer Queen Black, which I'm in the beta for. It's really fun. It's simple and it's competitive, and it uses a lot of teamwork. And if you don't know what Killer Queen Black started from, it started in barcades, and it's really what popularized barcades. And I think that it's going to be known by a lot of people. And I think when you play it, you're gonna like my friend. When I go over to his house, he's got a whole joystick, huge ass thing that he plays it with, and I just use a controller. So I think it's gonna for people that want that experience. I think it's something I'm gonna play probably on the PC because like with my keyboard. But yeah, it's fun.
So this is PC, and I know in E3 it was also
It's
announced for
cross-platform. Yeah,
Switch, right? Okay.
yeah. I
Is it
thought it.
coming out on everything else as well?
I thought so.
Okay.
Um, I'm not. I do know PC and Switch for sure.
Cool. Well, that is a good one for some party games, some a little bit of local multiplayer, which I'm gonna guess there's going to be some other local multiplayer games that are going to pop up tonight as well. But Killer Queen Black, nice shout out to something for people to look forward to. So, Dave, thank you again for joining us tonight. I hope you feel better. And again, people can catch you on a number of E2KG podcasts, and also, what's your Twitter handle? Twitter handle one more time.
Comic Book Guy 90. And thanks again, guys, for having me, even though it was kind of short.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks for joining us. So tonight, gentlemen, this is the rest of the show. Dave gave us a great introduction, a little bit of tease with some categories, but we're going to kick it off, and we've got lots to talk about, gentlemen. We have our 8 different categories, and I'm going to dive right into it because I'm excited to hear some of your discussions, some of your situations here. So gentlemen and listeners, as you know, here on Enough to Keep Going, every week we discuss a number of our gaming thoughts, experiences as we dive deep into topics, or we talk about our playlists. And a lot of times that those discussions are framed with the rest of our lives, right? We're parents, we're family, we have some family responsibilities, and that leads us into our first category tonight, which is game most likely for a family game night. So, and this is a great category to start with because we are all over the place on titles for this one. So, actually, Prime, I'm going to have you get us started here because you picked an actual a party game. So, what
Yeah,
was your pick?
yeah. I went the usual route. So I picked Super Mario Party, which recently came out on the Switch. Excuse me. So I'll play that with mostly with my family, my wife and my kid, my son. I haven't played it with like my extended, more extended family, my brothers and sisters, but I want to kind of get that going. Maybe I'll take it. I'm going on a trip, for the holidays coming up, so hopefully I'll take that with me. We can get going with my in-laws and all my wife's family. So hopefully we'll get that going and have a good time, and maybe get a little mad at each other every once in a while.
That's what I
for
was going to ask. Was
Yeah,
it really
if it's
create
every
a
man
good
for
time?
himself. Yeah.
Okay. So that is I'm glad to hear that your kids are your son and your family are enjoying it. My kids have enjoyed it as well, and I have not braved the randomness of Super Mario Party. Uh, but Swiss, you've got another game which I think brings a little more skill than some of the luck star distribution that the end of a Mario Party game brings. So what was your pick for family game night, Swiss?
Well, at my house, we've been playing a lot of Super Smash Brothers Ultimate lately, and it was facilitated by the fact that you can throw the GameCube adapter on there, and I have some old GameCube controllers from mid 2000s, and we've been going to town the last few nights. As a matter of fact, we were playing before I came on the podcast tonight, so it's been a lot of fun. Um, I will say, you say there's skill involved and not randomness, but not the way we play. So a lot of it is a desperate um, competition for like the ultimate attacks that you can do. The little ball comes down, you get it, and you can do a super attack. And for the most part, we just play against each other and have like a very low level CPU character. So um, nothing intense, but the kids are having a good time with it, and um, you know, it's fun whenever we get to try to win and defeat a new challenger, whoever. So you win the battle, and then you get the challenger. It's everybody cheers for you. It's a good family camaraderie. Um, there hasn't been any fractures yet. We'll see how it goes as we proceed. The game's only been out a couple of weeks, so.
So when the challenger approaches, do your kids hand the controller off to a specific, you know, a specific
Whoever,
child to
whoever
who's got the most
whoever won
skill?
the match
Ah,
gets to fight the challenger. Now, if it were on my profile, I'd probably demand the rights to face the challenger. But my son was the one that was playing the most initially, so he has the most characters. So we've kind of his has become the family profile at this point.
excellent. Well, it's very, very kind and of you to allow your kids to face a challenger on their own and grow into that as well. So Smash, that's a great example of a game that can bring the family together, and so far in a positive way around the TV. So my pick, gentlemen, is another game that can bring not only the gamers together around the TV, but anybody else who's in the family or over for any type of family or party. So my pick is Jackbox Party Pack 5. So played this a number of times this fall with my family. My sons have played it with as they've had other friends over. So again, it's Jackbox, right? So it's a lot of fun. It makes it easy to grab people. Everybody's phone or a tablet becomes a controller. There is another You Don't Know Jack kind of derivative game in there in terms of trivia, but then there's also some other ones, some really kind of creative ones where you are splitting. You've got to fill in the blank, almost like a Mad Lib style, where the whole point of it is to split the room. So not necessarily have everybody agree with you or disagree with you, but putting kind of thinking about how and who your audience is, and a response that some people will find interesting and some people will totally disengage with, rather than kind of winning everybody over. There are other games on there. One of them is another one where you are trying to win everybody over. It's almost like a sales pitch game. You start by you have a problem, and you kind of self-define that problem, and then you kind of create a product and give a little bit of a drawing and a tagline for what that product is, and you sell it to the rest of the audience. And then they vote. They've got a certain amount of money and they vote for it. So a lot of interaction back and forth, and again, like these games, like the Jackbox games, they can be as dull or as dry as your audience is, but if everybody kind of gets into it, they can become a relatively fun and sometimes age appropriate even games. So it's been very fun to play with my family in that way. So our final pick here for family game night, I'm going to turn it over to you, Agasicles, because I'm really curious to know how your pick about bringing territories together also brings your family together. So what was your pick for family game night? Agasicles is on mute, and now he's off.
Mine is one that's admittedly a bit contrived, right? Because I have not been willing to relinquish any time on the Switch to my family. So I picked one that would, if I did have to do so, that was a release of this year, would be the one that I would go with. To set up for them to demonstrate, and that's just Civilization 6 on the Switch. So it's interesting. That I think that makes it a clean sweep for Switch games. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is actually. Yep. I mean, party packs on everything, but I've been playing it on Switch with my family. So yes, it is a sweep for Switch.
Yeah, and the Switch, and the problem with the Switch the problem with the category this year for me was last year we had the Switch and we had a lot of family oriented party games that slid across my interest area. On Switch and maybe even on other platforms. So we had Splatoon and some other games. Nothing that came out that was kind of core to the Nintendo audience really came into my area of interest this year on Switch. I definitely when I look at like the things that I bought this year on Switch, the vast majority of them are remakes from other consoles that fall neatly within the genres that are my preference. So, but I figured, if I did have to pull my family through something, pulling them through a turn-based strategy game that also had like a historical context to it and would be a little educational for my kids, would still be worthwhile for a family game. So that's the pick that I went with.
Cool. No, as a father who had his son play Civ 4 back in elementary school for the sake of social studies, yeah, right. I can appreciate the pseudo history there, or the potential for interest in exploring that a little bit.
I was about to say the same thing, but my game was Age of Empires 2.
Okay. A little more clicks per minute there in terms of. So I want to come back to Prime here. So how did Super Mario Party surpass Super Smash Brothers in your household as a family game pick?
Well, that's an easy one because my wife doesn't really like fighting games, so at least not this one. Some of the older ones she'll like Mortal Kombat, like the old Street Fighters. But yeah, this is a little bit too much for her. So
that's a great image, though, right? Because your wife doesn't like the cartoony knock somebody off a platform fighting game, but Mortal Kombat, that's perfectly fine.
Well, it's just too much going on. She's kind of it just overwhelms her. So yeah, that's why I picked that one to get going.
Great. Well, gentlemen, this is a good, diverse way to start off our topics. Any other final thoughts or questions that you have on any of these picks? So again, Super Smash Brothers, Super Mario Party, Jackbox Party Pack 5, and Civ 6.
I guess one of the questions I wanted to ask is, so you guys, I mean, everybody bought Labo but me, right?
I did not.
Okay.
Not yet, at least. I'll probably get one eventually.
Okay. So just curious why that game or that kid or whatever didn't come up in this category, because I know that you guys spent time with your family specifically doing the Labo setup and gameplay.
I'm gonna wait for a future category before I address that question.
Oh, okay. So I guess I'll say that in terms of Labo, if you would have asked me the 2 weeks after it came out, or there was another window of time on a couple rainy days, that Labo was a great family game, right? It ended up being something my kids did sink a lot of time into, but it was a very um, short interaction period, right? They built it, they played it, they moved on. They built the next thing, they played it, they moved on. And by the time they didn't even finish the kit the first time around, and it wasn't until this fall when they came back to build the house and the piano. Again, it it was a great night as they were building it and playing with it over the course of a weekend, but it wasn't necessarily sustained. So that's where I think this is where my distinction of it didn't necessarily involve as many people, and it was something that they were not coming back to because like almost like a Lego set. Once it was built, you played with it a little bit and you stuck it on a shelf. All right, so let's move on. Right, that's some of our talk about parenting, and so as our roles as parents, it also means that we end up kind of catching whatever illness our kids are playing host to, or in Dave's case, who's not a parent, you can still catch something. So which also goes back to that first topic that Dave kicked us off with, which is most likely to play when we're sick. So, what is the game that you are most likely to play when you're sick? So, again, these are 2018 games. So, and I guess, Khalees, I'm going to come back to you because I'm guessing, given your pick, that this is about kind of a power fantasy or something to lose yourself in when you're not feeling 100%. Is that correct?
So the rationale behind my pick is mainly that when I am sick, there's a few different vectors that I'm going to normally pursue, um, and they're going to vary. It's either going to be the quick, short 5 minute pick up and play type of thing, or it may be the guaranteed fun, but short duration, definitively accomplish something and then put it away. So kind of like a Need for Speed is what springs to mind for that, versus a mobile game, which is kind of what I was meaning when I talked about the quick 5 minute pick up and play, or even something turn based that you can play and then play your turn and then save the file and come back later. But the other thing that I like to play when I'm sick is something that is a productive grind, right? So it's a thing that you just have to put time in on and kind of mine, like for Bitcoin, so to speak. And but that offers you clear, definitive, deterministic progression as well as you march through it. And that game for me this year has been Far Cry 5. So it is the one game, probably above all others, that has this kind of set definitive path where I know, I'm gonna have to do some do-overs every once in a while, but I can clearly see the train tracks that are laid out in front of me. And I have some choices to hop back and forth across those tracks, but most of those are tactical selections, in the moment or in the approach, right? So as I traverse the map, I have the option to grab a boat, which is going to drive a certain dynamic in a transit. I'm thinking about a very recent mission where my election to take a boat to the mission made a very big difference in how that mission unfolded. So for me, it was I went this year. I went with what is the game that has the most valuable grind to it, and that game for me this year was Far Cry 5 by Ubisoft.
Nice. Yeah, I can appreciate that idea of the grind while you're sick, right? You want to feel somewhat, or at least I do. I want to feel somewhat productive, like I'm advancing something. But for me, my pick also not only has a little bit of that grind, but also gives me some freedom. It gave me the ability to kind of get out and do something and lose myself in a world and in an experience that I couldn't as I was sick. So my pick for a game that I would play when I was sick is Marvel's Spider-Man. So this is a game that I sunk a lot of time into and really enjoyed the world. And as a Spider-Man fan, when I'm sick, I can kind of keep grinding out some levels and play with some of those gadgets during the combat. And even if I'm not quite all there enough to get the rhythm down for the combat, I really just enjoy swinging and living in and playing around in that world of New York. And so that idea of not being 100%, but still being able to have a little bit of freedom and fun is where the Marvel Spider-Man comes in for me as my game and my comfort game when I'm sick. So I'm gonna guess Prime and Swiss, that your games are also kind of comfort games as well. So Swiss, can you talk us through your game? Because I think your game, your pick
Yeah.
here, it's
It's
like a
unconventional.
well, I don't know. It's kind of
It,
like a big hug or a deep inhale, right?
yeah, it's so my pick was Kirby Star Allies for the Nintendo Switch, and my rationale is that when I'm sick, uh, I really don't want to have to think too hard and focus. So, and a lot of the games that I like, they're very heavily story based RPGs, or they're strategy games or action games that require some level of attention. So, kind of scanned what I've played this year and thought of the game that was, like you said, like a big cuddly hug and makes you feel good, but also doesn't require um, too much brain power. So you can jump in there, and it's kind of like, as you guys said, you just kind of jump in and you can do some levels, and it's not going to heavily tax you, and then you can put it down and get some sleep like you need to be doing when you're sick. So um, I wouldn't say it was like one of my all-time favorite games this year. It was nice for what it was. Some of my kids really enjoy it. Uh, Kirby is a very popular Smash selection here, but yeah, I thought for a sick person, it's kind of like when your mom would make you like some nice hot chocolate or something. Just like it's comfort. It's just comforting. So
So Prime, is your game a comfort game as well?
Yeah, I had a little bit of a problem kind of picking this because I think I started thinking about it a little bit too much. Like I started breaking down the different sicknesses, like a cold and a flu, like depending on what I'm depending on what I have, I want to play something different. But I kind of settled down and just like if I really had like a really bad flu or like a super bad cold, and I'm just like kind of out of it, just kind of want to sit there and do nothing. So I picked up Pokemon Let's Go. Basically, just because it's nothing too strenuous. I don't have to think really too much about it. If I want to avoid the gym battles, I can. I could just battle the people that I find walking around the different towns and the routes. So or just try to do 100 or 200 combo catches to try to find a shiny, which I still don't have one in this game. This is really starting to get me mad, but that's all right. I've seen some people that go up to like 300 catches on one type of Pokemon. They still don't find a shiny, so it's amazing. That's probably going to be my luck, which obviously it looks like it. But yeah, I just wanted something a little bit more low key, and just something I can chill with, and catch a few Pokemon here and there, and I'm good to go.
All right. So, any thoughts, any comments, questions about any of our picks? So again, we've got Far Cry 5, Spider-Man, Kirby Star Allies, and Pokemon Let's Go.
we're two categories in, and there's been no repeat selections.
There's no overlaps yet, right? Yeah. No,
Not yet.
not yet. We'll get there. We'll get there, definitely. So, yeah, we will. So let's go ahead and keep moving on into our next category. And actually, here is I guess I'm going to say it's a repeat, but it's a different category. So my choice for best ported game is the same as Prime's choice for game to play when he's sick. So I'm choosing Pokemon Let's Go as the new, not necessarily a new lease on life, but definitely kind of that port and remaster, because it really is red and blue with a Let's Go kind of skin to it. And but at the same time, it's been great. It's been, there's something about being able to avoid Zubats in a cave. There is some great joy in being able to figure out which ones you want to try to catch and which ones you're not. And there's still some actual Pokemon battling going on and not just throwing of balls. And I've had a chance to play with my son, and playing two players, guys, is a lot of fun in this game. It's kind of goofy, and it definitely makes you a little overpowered when you're in a gym battle, but it's also been a lot of fun and added another depth to it there. So that's my pick for best ported game. So Prime, you didn't choose Pokemon for your revival. You picked something that's definitely a little more chaotic than my very organized Pokedex. So what was your choice here for New Lease on Life Best Ported Game?
I went with the the more explosion type of game here, and that's Red Faction Guerrilla Remastered, which is still one of my favorite games back from the 360. Now ported to the Xbox One. Looks great. Still plays really well. Um, the explosions, all that looks even better than it did on 360. And I thought it looked pretty good on the 360 too. When you're blowing up a building. I think I mentioned this last episode, or maybe episode before, where it just buildings just don't kind of collapse on each other. They'll kind of like fall and kind of fall over again, and just the way it plays. It's I'm loving it just as much as I did back in the day on the 360. So that was my pick, Red Faction.
Cool, excellent. So, Swiss and Agasicles, you guys have not picked the same game, but you've picked the same developer. So you both have games from Platinum. So, Agasicles, what was your pick for New Lease on Life Best Ported Game?
So it wound up being Bayonetta, and I know that that's a bit of a thing that some websites or podcasts might say they might not allow it because it's not a 2018 release technically when it originally launched. And
it
in
came out
fact,
this February of 2018 for the Switch, if you're going to count the Switch version, right?
I'm talking about original Bayonetta. So when we talk about new Lease on Life Best Ported Game, what was made available on Switch was not only Bayonetta 2, but the original Bayonetta. And it's the original Bayonetta that I'm talking about because I haven't spent that much time with Bayonetta 2. So you actually got access to Bayonetta mostly by buying Bayonetta 2, and then that gave you a free code to download Bayonetta. So other than people who bought Bayonetta 2, I don't know anybody else who played Bayonetta this year. But that is the one for me that caused that game to kind of splash back up on my radar after having played it either on PlayStation 3 or Xbox 360. I'm not sure which, but I was reminded about how surprisingly good that game is after you get past some of the like over sexualized themes and whatnot, and start to look past that silliness. It is actually a really good game. In the same fashion that a lot of people will make a Diablo clone that in some ways fixes the bad design elements in a Diablo game. For me, Bayonetta is like my that's like my makeup game for Devil May Cry. And so I enjoyed getting a chance to go back to it this year.
Nice. Yeah, that's nice. I wasn't sure if you were choosing Bayonetta 2 or Bayonetta 1, but you're right that it comes in that package and is a nice way for people to get a new lease on that game and experience it, especially in the portable aspects of it. So Swiss, you've got a game that I really enjoyed last year, got a lot of praise last year, but it comes out on a new platform this year, and you had a chance to spend more time with it. So what is your pick here for New Lease on Life?
Yeah, my view on this category was it didn't matter how long ago it came out as long as a port came out within 2018. And I kind of cheated because a port for this game did come out in 2018, but not on the platform that I played it on. But I love the game so much, I wanted to find some place to be able to praise it, and I chose Nier Automata, which was just I really enjoyed the battle system, which again, I didn't realize that Bayonetta was the same team until I started getting into Nier Automata, and then I did some more research, and then all the dots were connected. So interesting, shortish story. I still have to do. I still want to play some more. It kind of ends rather abruptly, but that's because they want to set you up to do like play again, change this and that, and get a different ending. So they got that little bit of a Chrono Trigger vibe in the game. But the combat's just fantastic. I like the characters, and it's just a very well designed game. The pacing is good. The length of the missions, They're not too long. They're not too short. I felt like I could get in there, play a few missions, and get out. So it met that for me, and just a very solid effort. So I encourage anyone, if you haven't picked it up yet, to check it out.
Cool. Yeah, no, I'm glad that this was a category that you had suggested. And I think you're right, right? Sometimes there are those games that kind of slip through the cracks last year, and the ports, the remasters definitely give everybody a chance to come back to them. And whether it's on the new platform or their original platform, right? So Nier Automata is on PS4, it's on PC, and it's also this summer it was released on Xbox One. And yeah, a really amazingly designed game with a lot of good story layers there as well. So our picks for New Lease on Life, best ported game, we've got Pokemon Let's Go, we've got Red Faction Guerrilla Remastered, we've got Bayonetta, and Nier Automata. So any thoughts, any comments, gentlemen, on any of these follow-ups? Prime.
I just want to say I was actually thinking of Bayonetta and actually Diablo 3, but I actually never played those back in the day, so I was like, I didn't want to kind of cheat like that, so I figured I wanted something that at least I had played in the past. So, but as far as I could tell, Diablo 3 and Bayonetta, obviously that I guess because just talking about they're great ports too.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I think a number of us have the Diablo on Switch, and I've actually played a little bit of it as well. So have you? Right, it plays really well. It plays very similar to with a controller as it did on Xbox and PlayStation. And that port goes all the way back into last generation as well. So
I was expecting somebody to pull that one out, but
yeah, nope, not yet. I don't think so. Maybe it shows up later, but right now I think we've got other good games to talk about, right? And that is the nice thing about these categories. It gives us a chance to hit on some things that maybe we haven't had a chance to really spend a lot of time on during our normal shows over the course of the year. Definitely during our normal shows, though, we have spent a lot of time on the business of the video game industry. We spent a lot of time on on questionable business practices, and so that moves us right into our next category, which was aptly named last year during all the Battlefront, Star Wars Battlefront 2 loot box hullabaloo. So this is our wretched hive of scum and villainy, or the game most emblematic of sleazy business practices. And we all have a little bit of a different answer to this one. So, Swiss, I'm going to start off with you because I think you've got one of the most recent examples of some sleazy business practice over there at Starbreeze.
yeah, I chose both Telltale and Starbreeze for Overkill's The Walking Dead, and I haven't played the game, but I've known that uh, we've been following it as and on our news shows. Um, First with Telltale when they kind of rather abruptly shut the studio down and left a skeleton crew to finish The Walking Dead, and then subsequently The Walking. So there was that we had a long discussion, I think, talking about how Telltale probably did not handle that with the most grace and class. They probably could have done a little bit better by their employees. Moving on, The Walking Dead was supposed to be continued, doesn't do very well, and then you get news stories about how the offices of Starbreeze were raided due to, I think it was potential insider trading or something, and it just kind of became a mess. And um, while this year we didn't really have any loot box controversies, so uh, this one to me was just like a pretty good example of the I don't want to say sinister side of game development, just the sad or unfortunate side of sometimes when games aren't successful.
So I'm going to get some clarification here, and Prime, help me out. So is this so? My understanding is Overkill's The Walking Dead by Starbreeze is the
Oh, they're two different games.
this is the Left 4 Dead one. This is the one that Agasicles was excited about coming out of E3. This is the one that kind of really landed with a thud on PC. And these are the guys that are the Insider Trader ones, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, because the other game is Robert Kirkman's studio, which is picking up the rest of the Telltale ones, which does have a similar name, but I think you're right. Like the shady business practices of Starbreeze. Anytime your offices get raided for insider trading, yeah, not such a good thing, right? And I think there are.
So, my
Yeah, go
mistake.
ahead.
I conflated the two. So, but it was pretty much the fact that they were all surrounding this one. I know it wasn't one Walking Dead game now, but both kind of had a similar feel for me, so I went in that direction.
All right. So, but I think you do land on one that both Prime and I are thinking about, and that is kind of the shady business practices around the abrupt closure of Telltale. Right. That was a game that the stories go, there were people who Telltale was hiring up until the weekend before they closed. Telltale also had a lot of news stories around kind of their forced crunch. And so, Prime, you and I both kind of land on this is the first time that we have an overlap in our list, is that you and I both kind of land on that the kind of the crunch and the shady business practices of developer publisher focused kind of business with Telltale, and the crunch and the tone deaf messaging coming out of Rockstar related to Red Dead Redemption.
Yeah, I wanted to go more into instead of just a specific game, more into the overall industry and the developers and just like Swiss had mentioned Starbreeze and you had mentioned Starbreeze. They had excuse me, they had insider trading, and Telltale was just like mismanagement of just their whole company basically. Reading some articles on The Verge and some other places, I heard that they kind of, even when they kind of blew up and were getting all these properties and everything like that, they still kind of had that small indie mentality, and they didn't really kind of grow out of that and expand themselves, and just the way they were thinking and how to run their business. And then Rockstar too, same thing with Telltale. It kind of came out that they had all these employees working like all these crazy hours. And I know there's even when in my job that I work now, and probably you've seen in other places too, people, there are people that do like to they like to work, they'll do the overtime, they'll work crazy hours, but not everybody wants to do that. And I don't know if it's kind of that mentality where people like, okay, they see these one or two people, three people doing that, and they're like, oh, maybe we have to do that too, or we should do that. And, and it kind of gets, it's not really peer pressure per se, but it's kind of that mentality where they're like, oh, we better do this too, otherwise someone's going to say something about us, so we won't get that raise, or we won't get that promotion, stuff like that. And it happens, and you probably shouldn't do that, but I mean, we're all human. You're going to kind of feel that way. So, but it's just unfortunate that these things came up. And I was thinking about this. It's just kind of weird. I never thought about it. And these game companies and developers, they're just like any other corporate entity out there. All this stuff can happen to them too. So it's just, I guess, kind of a slap in a slap into reality, I suppose. It's just how everything gets run.
Yeah, no, I think some of those stories around the putting in your time at the office at Rockstar, just in case one of the housers show up, or the forced overtime and long hours with unrepresentative pay, certainly kind of really came to a head. Even back during GDC back in the spring, the idea of crunch coming out, and developers kind of talking about the potential of unionizing or some type of organization, and you had.
So
Go ahead.
I'd like to submit an objection.
As wait, you're going to submit an objection to that concept, or the idea that this counts as a sleazy business practice?
The concept of crunch, and this has come up several times throughout the year, and I've laid off the gavel this entire time. engineering in general, in any type of engineering work that involves doing work that someone else is paying for, right? Any type of engineering work that involves a granting of funds before a finished thing is delivered, right, has crunch. There are deadlines that come up. I mean, if so, look, and I have the utmost respect for the people who make the things that we love, and I understand it, but I have worked on ships and electronic systems and radars and yada 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 yada, and every single one of those projects, when it comes up to delivery time, has crunch. I'm sorry, it is not isolated to the video game industry, and I get a little perturbed by, and I don't think it's our fault. I think the gaming media does this by this advertising of this hot air balloon that makes it seem like they're the only people who are subjected to it. It happens on movies. It happens on television shows. It happens in defense contracting. Great Scott, it happens in defense contracting, right? I mean, you talk about being stuck on a ship, and so you make something work. That is crunch. Go ahead, Greg. Sorry.
I just want to say that Agasicles and I were in a Dodge's Chicken at 10:30 p.m. in Pascagoula, Mississippi, because of crunch. So anyway, you can continue.
So let me ask this question to frame that, because I think you're right. Right, this is not unique, and it's not even unique to software development. That there's all kinds of industries where there is a hard and fast deadline. From your experience, does crunch happen within a certain time frame, or is crunch, so I guess what I'm saying is the stories coming out of Rockstar that says crunch lasted for 9 months or the last year of a product, does that count as crunch, or is that a working condition where, yes, we need to ship this by X date, and you work back on from the calendar at that point? There's crunch. I agree with that, but where is that? Where does the line from crunch stop and abusive working conditions potentially occur?
Yeah, and that's tough to say. And I mean, my experience, it was highly dependent upon project, right? The larger the project, and in general, the riskier the project was that was taken on by any given company, right? So the projects that extend the company, the projects that are like the biggest thing that a company has ever done up until that point are always those projects, right? And those are the projects where people live on the job, and that occurs. I mean, what Swiss is talking about, and I don't want to get into the specifics of it on air, but like what Swiss is talking about, that condition lasted for 18 months, right? I did not live at home for 18 months, right? And it started in Mississippi and it ended in California, right? So, and then I got some downtime, and then the next big project that I was on, which was again something beyond what the company had done before, same thing, high travel conditions, yada. So, so that's that was defense contracting. Then there's government IT deploying software systems. There's other IT jobs. It depends, and it's going to differ from company to company and industry to industry. I guess my point is that I agree that there are certain industries that have cultural things that have to be addressed. I take a little bit of umbrage to the way the media projects it, as if that is the only industry that it occurs in. That being said,
I think that's a really good point.
It's definitely if endemically from a software. Let's talk about from a software engineering as a discipline and as an academic domain. If that industry endemically has so first of all, across all engineering, but in particular software engineering, there is a problem with the art of software estimation, right? And that's why like something grotesque like 70-something% of all software application development projects always end up late and over budget. But if that industry has a historic problem with, say, missing their estimates by over half, right? Then that's a problem. That's a managerial problem. And if there is now, the one thing I will say also in terms of government contracting, even though it still happens, there are specific regulations and legislation that prevents you from underbidding. So again, if the problem in the video game industry is that development houses, development studios routinely and ridiculously underbid a job, if they're in the habit of telling the publisher that it will take half as much level of effort and money to produce a game, that's an endemic specific thing to the industry that it's a problem. So sorry.
No, that's good, right? I think that's a good perspective to frame this in, is that it is part of that larger context, and having some kind of disciplinary framework and context for that does make a difference. And that's not always covered in a lot of the stories that have hit upon this year. So, but I do want to keep you on the mic for a little bit longer here, Gas, because I think the game that you chose sure as heck could have used a little more crunch. So what was your pick here, and why?
Well, it's interesting because this is the reason for this. The rationale for this pick is actually in the same vein, and I'm cracking up now about Swiss's recollection of Dodge's chicken. That's going to linger with me for a long time. But it's in the same vein in terms of things that maybe management does and decisions that are made at a business level that are harmful to their employees and harmful to their reputation. So I picked Fallout 76 this year because, to me, there's no way in the world that as an engineering leader or a business leader, but I'll more so put this on engineering leadership. There's no way in the world that you didn't know that game was not done, right? There's no way that your quality control process is that broken.
They sent out a letter telling people that right. It's not done.
And again, that to me is a problem, right? Hey, let me tell you, the game we're about to sell you is crap, but there's a reason for it, and we'd still like you to give us your $60 so that we can have you participate in the beta until we get the game actually ready for release. That to me is not acceptable. Now, that being said, the reason I picked the game is because to me it's indicative in terms of a pool of scum and villainy. It's really indicative of a 360-degree problem, in my opinion. It's not solely on Bethesda-ish. My problem with the way that whole thing developed is it's because for years those guys delivered AAA games that had major So a thing that we do in software engineering, I'll try to make this quick. A thing that we do in software engineering is we classify bugs by severity, and we tier them by Sev 1 through Sev 5. A Sev 1 bug is a thing that renders a software application unavailable. Bethesda has shipped AAA games charging $60 a piece that have had Sev 1 bugs in them for several years since console generation 7. And again, in software engineering, the general thing is that you don't ship with Sev 1 bugs at all, unless it's really a thing that can only happen, on a Wednesday when the moon is blue and the person in your house has drank 4.5 glasses of water, right? The convergence of things that have to happen have to be so ridiculous to permit that. You're not supposed to ship stuff with Sev 1 bugs. And as far as I know, every Bethesda game that has shipped since console generation 7, almost every game has had every tier 1 game from their core franchises, meaning Fallout, Elder Scrolls, I guess with the exception of Mass Effect, but I think early Mass Effect games on a PlayStation at least also had Sev 1 bugs.
Mass Effect Andromeda came out with some,
Yeah, I don't know that Mass Effect Andromeda had anything I would call a Sev 1, but it definitely had a crap ton of Sev 2s and Sev 3s, right? So my point is that those guys have done that for a decade at least, and they have continuously been given a pass by the game's media and given all sorts of... Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say Mass Effect was a BioWare game, right? Not a Bethesda game.
Yeah, sorry.
Right.
There's a third franchise that I'm missing in there. I don't know what it is, but my point is that they have shipped product with huge problems. They've been given a pass by the media and largely a pass by us, right, as gamers. So in my opinion, we got to where we got this year with Fallout 76 because a company has been allowed to do things that in my opinion, have been taking advantage of people to a certain extent, and they've been permitted to get away with it. So this year, and you see more than one Bethesda problem happening right concurrently along with this. So they're the ones who get that award for me for this year.
I think I think they have certainly earned it, right? Not only in terms of the shipping, but all the other problems that it came out with it, right? Shortly thereafter, in terms of their security breaches, leaking private information, all the the canvas bag controversies, they just had one hit after another. So there's plenty to be disappointed if you were one of those people that laid down some money there to give them some time in their beta. But we had some other games that we were disappointed about this year, gentlemen, as well. So Prime, you and I both were disappointed by some Switch ports. So for me, I was this was a tricky one for me because for a long time I thought it was going to be MLB The Show 18, and I realized I'm not so much disappointed by it as a game as I came to that realization that it's a sports franchise that has to slowly iterate every year, and so it was more about me as a player versus the game itself. So really, my pick here is The World Ends With You Final Remix, right? This was a game back on the DS that I loved and have some emotional attachment to, but the port that came to the Switch really is just the iOS port back to the fact that there's no, you don't necessarily get a whole lot of controls, and you end up using a pointer or the touchscreen, and you're not using Joy-Con or joysticks at all to move around. A lot of kind of just quickly ported pieces that could have made it a better experience if they spent some more time with it. So that was mine. But Prime, you were disappointed by a different Switch game.
Yes. So my pick for this year was Ark Survival Evolved, and not so much with the technical gameplay or graphics and all that stuff. Yeah, I mean it's not the prettiest game on the on the Switch or of all the ports that have come out. It's more about the community, and I was hoping that playing it on the Switch, there'd be a little bit better community. You can do PvP, which is person versus person, or PvE, which is just playing against the environment, the dinosaurs, and the story, I'll say in quotes, that goes to Ark. So obviously, if you're playing PvE, you shouldn't be able to mess with other people that you're playing with on the same server, but you can still do it. And this was a problem even back on the Xbox One when I was playing it back on the game preview. So there's still ways that players can basically they can make the dinosaurs like kind of go after them, and then if they like say you have a big hut or a base or something, they can like as the person's kind of going through that or past that, the dinosaur kind of gets stuck or there's just an obstacle, so the dinosaur's going to knock it down because that's what dinosaurs do, I suppose, when they're trying to go after somebody. So then it's going to destroy them. So indirectly, they're messing with your game where they really shouldn't be able to do that. But I mean, obviously, they that's the way they coded it. You can't really, I suppose, you can't do anything about it, or you could, I suppose, but they just did it, and that's the same thing's happening on the Switch. People, I've logged out, come back, and my whole little house or hut that I built is totally destroyed, and I'm dead somehow. I was like, well, how did that happen? But and I know what it is because I played it before. So that was my big disappointment, that the communities, basically people are jerks. It just all comes down to that. Stop being a jerk, please. But that's my pick.
All right. So yes, I think the reality of playing with other people and the downsides to our own humanity is part of that challenge. So this is our next pick certainly talks about humanity and has a story to tell, but it also is the first time, gentlemen, that we have a game that gets multiple nominations, multiple picks in the same category. So the first time, we are an hour into this, and finally we get a game that two of you have chosen within the same category. So, Agasicles and Swiss, please tell us about your most disappointing game experience for 2018.
I'll yield the floor to Swiss to let him get it started.
All right. I guess we chose Red Dead Redemption 2. And I'm going to be brief because I'll be honest, I haven't played Red Dead Redemption 2, but as I was getting hyped in the weeks leading up to it, almost to the point where I was about to purchase it, I saw a few chat notices from one of Gasicles describing uh, the lack of fun he had with the game. So immediately my hype balloon deflated, and the more I heard you guys impressions, and then read some stuff online, I was like, this game is not what it was all cracked up to be. So as far as the drop off from my expectations to my current perception, that'd be Red Dead Redemption 2. I will say real fast to answer Agasicles' question from before, one game that I did play that was in the running for me was the Nintendo Labo, specifically the robot kit, and for a lot of the reasons that that DB described. It took time to build. We had fun building, and my son really liked going through that. We built it, but just getting the suit on and actually playing it is time consuming. And then another kid wants to play, and you have to spend 2 or 3, couple of minutes trying to get it off and then get the things adjusted because they have to be adjusted properly for it to actually read. And we've literally, I think he played it once or twice. And then when my brother was down with my nephews, we tried it one more time. And for the most part, it's been sitting over here. So given how excited we were to pick that up and how much we played it, I would also say that is a strong disappointing game experience nominee. But Mr. Gasicles, why don't you describe why Red Dead Redemption deserves the title?
Yeah, so first of all, I guess while we're throwing out alibis, I want to go back just one bit and mention that a very close runner-up for Wretched Hive of Scum and Villainy for me was Battlefield 5, which I really liked, but did not ship with the entire game. It's rolled out piecemeal.
But I'm gonna go ahead, but I want to challenge that one because that's a fun one. So
yeah.
So I don't know that they messaged that any of that was coming out with the game, right? I think they have a poor rollout and production schedule, but they told you ahead of time that you weren't going to get the battle royale mode, right?
Yeah, but this is my problem with Battlefield. And again, this is not a huge problem, right? I mean, when I say it was a runner up, I don't. Quite honestly, thematically, I think the industry did okay this year because they had such a bad 2017. I think everybody was trying to be on their P's and Q's, and nobody wanted to be the 2018 EA, which is why the Bethesda story is has such a funk about it. Battlefield 5 was only going to be the pick because it was the only one within arm reach for me to see anything that I would directly call out. My feeling with it was kind of in your face because here's the problem with it is they shipped the game. It had war stories, you got 3 war stories, and it had at least 1, maybe 2 more that were big tiles on your screen on the start page, padlocked. And then they missed the delivery date for the first rollout. That was the other thing and didn't say anything about it. It's it was supposed to show up on December 4th. I'm sitting there. I'm because I was actively playing the war stories and I was twiddling my thumbs and I was like, where is it? Where is it? Where is it? They dropped a huge patch that morning. And I'm like, where? Well, they dropped a huge patch on the 5th and that's what had the stuff in it. Not a big deal, but it was there. To talk about this most disappointing game experience, just to throw this out as well, because I don't want to get into it, but a very close runner-up to my pick, which was Red Dead Redemption 2 as well, was Monster Hunter World. But I'll just leave that as it is. Red Dead Redemption 2, I won't get into a ton of detail because I think we covered it pretty thoroughly in an episode a few weeks ago. But the general basis of it is number one, it's got a significant upfront investment required. It's about 16 to 20 hours before the game really starts. I felt that a lot of the advertisement of how great the game looked was heavily masked by the first few hours spent in the snow, where that doesn't really come through. You see an amazing ramp up in level of detail once the spring thaw starts occurring, and you can actually see some of the graphical elements in the environment around. So for me, the opening stages of a game need to do one of two things. Either the gameplay needs to be great, or it needs to at least hook me with the graphics, and that game did neither. And then, sorry. So it was lead-in, ramp-up time, graphic quality, and then
mechanics, right? How about mechanics?
Well, I was going to say, yeah. So again, I won't get into the super long details of like how they train you to do something, and then in what is a faux QuickTime event, right? It's a mass QuickTime event, but when you pull back the layers of obfuscation, it's a QuickTime event. Where they switch the mechanics and make the kinematics something entirely different than what they've trained you to do. So that's a thing. But in general, what I was going to mention, we talked about that on the episode. What I was going to mention, the third key element of disappointment for me was that it's a busy work game, like dressed and masked in a AAA production action adventure game. A AAA action adventure game is Horizon Zero Dawn. A AAA action adventure game is, quite frankly, Just Cause 3. A AAA action adventure game is Far Cry. It is a game that has a bunch of stuff to do that is action and adventure. Patting my horse's mane is not an action adventure game, right? Tying my shoes is not an action adventure. Having to keep warm is not. These are the trappings of survival games that give you busy work and things to do that are not fun. They're the types of things that CD Projekt Red has talked about that they're trying to ensure don't happen in their game. Quite frankly, it's the thing that I think it's the type of stuff that BioWare has mentioned. They're trying to make sure don't happen in their game. There are other people focused on game design that give you big open world that don't try and put a lot of administrivia and logistics in your face that are not fun. Red Dead Redemption 2 is not the only game that's guilty of it. Final Fantasy 15 Pocket Edition, I spent 2 minutes holding my hand on the phone screen to push a car down the road. Now explain to me how that's a game. I can't do that. So, but Red Dead.
That's the only time it happens in that game is that it's that interaction at the very beginning. But
yeah,
you're right.
Sure.
It's it's the first taste you get.
Right.
But I'll agree with you. Right, we had the same conversation related to Red Dead in terms of there is it is game systems and mechanics in there that feel dated, and I think we have explored this in a lot, and I got on the hype train about this too, right? It got me really excited about an Xbox One X and the graphical beauty of it all, but it also made me really appreciate what Assassin's Creed Odyssey does in terms of that action and adventure that you're talking about, right? It's a lot more game than it is a pretense of a Western life simulator. So, yeah, I think it's pretty easy to say that was a pretty disappointing experience for all of us who played it here on E2KG. So, but I think it also is one of those games that falls into our next category of game most likely to be named Game of the Year by major media outlets, or by most media outlets. So again, Swiss and Agasicles, you both have Red Dead Redemption 2 for this one as well. So even after all of our concerns, and after some of the glow of the release window has worn off, do you think that this still will get Game of the Year awards? Swiss?
Yeah, just because I know, well, I don't want to like sit here and say I'm a super critic of the media, but it just reading about it, trying to like once I started to get through that initial pass through of the first reviews, which really got me excited about the game. Like, they're starting off their reviews with this is a transcendent, type experience, and jarring that with like, with the Gasicles comments when he was initially playing it, and then in the tail of that, reading some additional reviews of more like not professional media people, but like kind of gamers that do it as a hobby, and seeing their comments where they weren't as rosy about the game, and then you start seeing some other stuff where it's like they're bending over backwards to maybe excuse the game's flaws, and they're like, you know, like you said, patting a horse's mane or something, but they're lauding that. So I feel like there was a lot of Rockstar hasn't released a new thing since like what 2013. They've been adding content to Grand Theft Auto 5 Online um, for a long time, but they haven't come out with something new. And everybody was excited about this. This was like going to be the new GTA 5. It was going to be great. It was going to be something that we've never seen before. And I just, it sells $750 million or whatever in the first weekend, or whatever it was. Um, there's just so much hype involved, and those those initial reviews, like everybody was coming out saying how fantastic it was, and so I just that combined with the fact that it's like a cross-platform Xbox and PlayStation game, I think will probably give it the edge to some of the other contenders.
So, Glycicles, does this get your pick because gaming media wants to make it the artsy craftsmanship that we keep, arguing for Richard? It's the Ebert argument about games as art from a decade ago, right? Is this why Red Dead gets your nod?
Yeah, it's man. I mean, pick all of our tropes of 2018, and there it's a checklist of why this result is most likely to happen. Right? It's the gaming media trying to make a thing out of a thing because that's what they want, right? Not necessarily because it's reflective of Now, granted, the games media aren't congressmen; they don't necessarily have constituents that they have to represent. But it's very akin to how the gaming media tried to make a very big deal out of VR, right? Which, in my opinion, is starting to the nose on that chip is starting to turn in the direction of 3D, right? And maybe it'll hang on a little more, or maybe it's just the ramp is longer. But it's why there's a place for games like Detroit Become Human and Heavy Rain. They're not the games that I want to play, right? And it's akin to it's another thing. The It's Another Thing movies crew are over the holiday break homework assignment has been to watch Orson Welles' last film and the documentary of his last film, and there's a lot of conversation between those two pieces about the art of making a movie versus movies that are commercially successful, and how those two things are kind of sometimes two tectonic plates that rub up against each other. In my opinion, Red Dead Redemption 2 is a game that meets the threshold of the needs that the games media and maybe to a certain extent the industry has for representing art. There needs to be a conversation, in my opinion, and there should be a conversation about how that thing is not necessarily for everyone. With a much greater focus and louder volume than it is when we use that as kind of a trope to describe gaming in general. The same thing goes for Monster Hunter World, right? A lot of fervor about how this needs to be a thing that you should play. And I'm just going to say, great Scott, if the future of games is Red Dead Redemption 2, I'm out, right? If the future of games is Monster Hunter World, that's just not what I want. And what I mean by that is, and maybe even to a certain extent, the brakes got hit on Fallout 76, thank goodness. But topically, it's not that those games are coming out. It's this massive fervor, this mob mentality from the games media that sometimes gets taken up by the gaming culture as well. It's very interesting when Fallout 76 dropped that getting more into streaming now. I have some friends who spend a lot of time streaming Fallout 76, and I didn't ask them at the time because I'm fairly new in getting to know them, but I was quite happy, frankly, to hear them, a few weeks after say that game's really not good, right? Because I was trying to figure out like, are you streaming this game a lot because it's fun? Because everything I'm hearing is that it's not fun. So, so at the end of the day, again, this whole thing of, most likely to be game of the year. I expect Red Dead Redemption 2 is going to get it because it does some innovative things, and maybe games as art are fun things to see, done and to see delivered and to see them unfolded. They're not something for me. I just don't have the time for the front end ramp. That's a waste of my time. And even if I pass that 60 to 20 hour point, like my big concern is I don't want to spend 15 minutes every hour like building a relationship with my horse, right? So
No, I think that's a good point, and I think that idea of games as art also ties in with Prime's pick here, because I think there are some cinematic elements, but Prime's pick is certainly more game than art. But it probably, I could see an argument where it walks that line a little bit better than Red Dead. So, and I think it's also probably the most likely alternative to Red Dead Redemption, and that is Prime. What is your pick for most likely to be Game of the Year?
So my pick is the other big game, I guess you can, the big game that came out this year. Earlier in the year, it was God of War on the PS4, and that was mostly just I haven't played either Red Dead or God of War. It was just kind of more of just there was something I needed to pick, and that was it was kind of it was the Game Award, Game of the Year too, also. So it kind of swayed me a little bit more, I guess, to pick God of War than Red Dead. So that's basically it. I mean, I haven't really followed either really all too much just because I haven't been playing it. So that's unfortunately I don't have anything deeper.
Sure, but I think there are some game design elements there. There's some artistic cinematic pieces, right? With what Corey Barlog tried to do with the kind of the continuous take, never having that cut, and kind of having the camera continue to follow. It definitely has its roots in cinema. It's a great tie-in, Agassicles, to Orson Welles, right? Touch of Evil. It was one of those initial openings in cinema where you had that long extended take at a time when that wasn't necessarily done, and God of War does that throughout the entire game, and so it does maybe try to balance that idea of game and art a little bit more, but it definitely lands more on the game side with a lot of its mechanics.
Yeah, and I guess just the other thing, real quick. Sorry not to jump
please.
in there, but was for both of these games, after the initial, hype and everything coming out, after a few weeks and even after a couple months, I kind of heard less negativity toward God of War than I did Red Dead Redemption. You kind of started to see kind of the chinks in the armor, kind of like I guess Lee was talking about, well, and it can kind of drag on at the beginning, and it does kind of do this and that a little bit too much. But God of War, I didn't really hear about that too much. Maybe I heard maybe a little bit repetitive here and there, and just kind of the core to it was more just kind of the same God of War, even just kind of dressed up a little bit different. So, which I mean, not a bad thing. I have played previous God of War, so I mean, to me that would probably be fine, in my book. So that was the other thing.
Cool. No, I think that these two, Red Dead Redemption and God of War, are probably going to be on almost everybody's top, Game of the Year list. But I'm going to take my host position here and go out on a limb, gentlemen. And I couldn't think of another game besides these two for the longest time until just the last 24 hours. And so here's how I'm going to position this: is that a site sees the mechanical weaknesses of and the overwrought world building and opulence of Red Dead Redemption, right? The petting a horse example that we keep coming back to, and so that takes some points off there. God of War, really solid game, still just God of War. It does a lot of really good things, and maybe stretches on a little bit too far as you have to go back to hell a couple different times. So there's some, maybe it's not a perfect design. Maybe it could have used some trimming of the fat there as well. And so they split the vote, and there's a dark horse that comes through, and that dark horse is Celeste. So it is specific. It knows what it is. It is a puzzle platformer. It is concise. It has no fat on it, and it is down to a very tight mechanical piece, but also something that is very accessible because of, as we've talked about way back in the spring, right? Some of the assists that it can do, right? That spikes don't hurt you, or you get unlimited jumps, or you get 2 different dashes, right? So it allows a range of people to play and experience what is relatively a very uh, simple little indie game that knows what it is and does it very well. Where the other 2 picks maybe try to be something more than what they might be. So there's my food for thought as just to diversify this discussion a little bit. Any other thoughts on any of these games, or anything else that you might think might sneak in as a dark horse?
No, but I mean, I think Celeste is a good chance of kind of that long shot of the game of the year. I haven't played it, but I've heard nothing but good things on pretty much all the podcasts that I listen to and all the sites I've visited. So it's hopefully it gets some wins out there.
All right, so let's move into, and we've got our negativity out of the way, right? And we're moving into not only what other people might think is a game of the year, but we're going to talk. The last 2 categories here are what are some of our favorite. We get the hidden gem and our most fun. So let's go ahead and work down with the hidden gem and the most overlooked game. So, Agasicles, your pick is one that Primer really already celebrated a little bit here, but I want to give you some time to talk about why you think Red Faction Remastered is a hidden gem.
Yeah, I think that mainly because I wrote something somewhere, or I don't know, maybe it was on the write up for the YouTube video that I posted of let's play. The big thing for me for Red Faction Remastered is when you go back and play it, and you've got to play a little deep into it to get enough of a chunk of the content to hit this realization, but it has a lot of the elements in it that the Ubisofts of the world, the Insomniacs of the world, maybe even I'm forgetting the studio's name who does Infamous. Is it Naughty Dog that does Infamous?
Sucker Punch.
Sucker
right?
Punch. You see the beginnings of a lot of things that the industry has evolved towards overall in its approach to third-person action-adventure open world kind of games. And I definitely give Ubisoft credit for, in my opinion, kind of nailing that to a point of repeatable perfection. But you see those things in Remastered, and it's kind of surprising because you're like, wait, Volition, right? So, but all the things that I celebrate this year for Far Cry 5 and last year and this year for Assassin's Creed, all those trappings and dressings are in Red Faction Remastered. And I don't know that it was advertised very well, and I don't know that it was covered very well. But the notion of, like, when you go into a map and you have that iconography all over the place, you have to make a strategic decision of how you're going to play the game. What is going to be your approach? You have to figure out the progression model. How does going after a given icon on the map lead to you becoming better? And how does that drive what sequence you want to do them in? Those things are there. Approaching vehicular missions, approaching missions that radically increase your heat, because heat is a nuisance, right? Attracting a lot of attention really bogs you down in a minute per minute fashion. So there are strategic targets you can go after that have different elements of how much the government forces in the area are going to harass you, stop you, fire upon you, and each instance of that, like stopping to engage with forces, drives your cycle time on task completion up, which you don't want. So what was surprising to me, and why I called it as a hidden gem, is as I started playing it, and again, it took a while till I got into it, I was like, whoa, wait, hey, I'm doing the exact type of thing cognitively that I have to do with an Assassin's Creed or a Far Cry, but except this is a game that came out 9 years ago. So I think there's a lot more there than people think of, and it makes the game worthwhile to go back and play.
Yeah, it's a really good point about how it's, and we talked about this on a previous podcast about some of the game design and how it's still very relevant, even at this stage. Prime, do you have any other thoughts on Remastered as you had it for another fave game of yours?
No, I mean, I think I've pretty much said most of what I wanted. And well, I guess just to kind of add on to what he was saying also too, and the multiplayer kind of did the same thing where you see a lot of elements that you see nowadays in the multiplayer games, like picking not really a class, but so in the multiplayer, you have backpacks that you can pick up, and you could probably, I mean, they probably had it back in the day too, that different kind of mechanics like this. It might have been dressed up a little bit different, but there's backpacks with varying abilities. So there's you can, it's like a jetpack, or you can like bull rush, charge through somebody or through a wall if you need to, and just different abilities like that. You could be super fast. You can do those all these abilities, and you see a lot of that now, especially in the superhero games, where maybe it's not so much you pick up stuff, but it's a class that you pick, before you start off, and you get that special ability. So, and of course, like I always like to say, it's a very underrated multiplayer from back in the day. So that's about it.
All right. So, Swiss, your pick is one that you've talked about on and off for a number of times over the course of this year, but it's also one that still kind of remains hidden, probably to a large chunk of the game audience. So, you want to talk about your overlooked and your hidden gem?
Yeah, I chose BattleTech, the PC strategy game from I think they're Harebrained Schemes or Harebrained Studios, but I would call it a double A title. It was birthed from a Kickstarter campaign, but it was just, as far as like you talking about Celeste being, it knows what it is and it tries to focus on that. This game is, tries to be a mech lance simulator. So you have kind of two layers to the game, which is the actual tactical battles on a 3D map, and there's enough there where you feel like you're positioning the mechs, and how you go about the battle determines your success, relative success, and it's still very satisfying for my son and I to do like what they have, like a called shot, where you basically try to do a precision strike on somebody and have it, hit him in the chest and take the mech out in almost like one or two shots. So there's just, the battles are satisfying for me. And then on the other level, it's kind of a menu based system, but just managing your unit. So if your mechs take too much damage in battle, guess what? They might be out for 3 weeks, and it might cost however many thousands of C bills or whatever the monetary denomination is to repair. So you better have some other mechs available. Your pilot gets injured, they might be in sick bay for 2 weeks, and if you want to do another mission, you have to do missions to earn money to get income. You better have some backups. But if you have too many backups and they're too skilled, your monthly expenses go up. So just, they have nice little scenarios that they pepper at you with, like, oh, you come in on the break room and they're doing something. Do you put a stop to it, or do you encourage it, or you just ignore it? And depending on what your choice is, you might get a morale boost, or you might get, depressed, but you might get more money, or whatever. They just have, it's surrounding a neat campaign. Nothing too spectacular, but the story's decent. But just that layer of, I can get myself lost in being like a 31st century mech warrior captain. So it may not be for everybody, but they knew what they were trying to accomplish, and it's a really neat so a really neat license. And I got it in April, pretty much shortly after launch, and every month or two, I jump back into it for a month. So to the point where I was playing last weekend, and I know you guys haven't really played it, and I don't know how many people really have, but I wanted to give it some love.
Excellent. I think that's exactly what this category is for, right? And so that's a good way to describe it, Swiss. So my pick here, it was going to be a game for PlayStation VR. It was going to be Moss. It's a little diorama puzzle game, a little platformer with the mouse. But that game is actually bundled in a headset. It's in one of the PSVR bundles that has been out for the holiday sales. So I don't really think it counts as a hidden gem anymore, since it's probably on a lot of people's at least they have a voucher code for it. So my alternative pick here for my hidden gem is going to be another PSVR game, and it is Knockout League. So this is a game that I have had a blast with over the course of, similar to you, Swiss. I pick it up every once in a while. I play, just a couple rounds. It is Mike Tyson's Punch Out in VR, right? So if that game ever had any type of enjoyment to you, put your body into it, and guess what, it's cartoony. It's about rhythm and being able to read people's tells, but also working up a sweat in the process and making sure that you've got enough clearance, because I've hit my head on the wall bobbing and weaving. So there's a lot there for those that are looking for something that hasn't maybe popped up on the PSVR radar in Knockout League. So our overlooked and hidden gem games are Red Faction Remastered, Battletech, and Knockout League. So we are coming to our final category, gentlemen. This is it. This is our life of the party, our most fun game. Congratulations, we made it this far. I want to give everything a little bit of time and room to breathe here. So and all of us have something different to talk about. So, which is good. And I'm going to go first because I'm on the mic. And my game is the game that is bundled with Moss. It is Astrobot Rescue Mission. So this is a Sony PSVR platformer. It is it came out this fall, it came out early October, and my son and I have been playing it on and off all fall. And it is the reason that it hits my most fun is it is the game that I am just have this stupid grin on my face every time I pick it up. It's cute. The puzzles are really creative. It's really solid platforming. It's almost like Mario 3D World in VR in terms of being able to kind of navigate that space. You've got a lot of different mechanics that you're doing. The platforming is tight. It's not kind of a little big planet floatiness. You definitely know what you're doing, and the immersion of having it in VR also means that as you're trying to find and rescue all the little robots, it really hides them in a variety of places. Whether I'm looking around and bending my head to try to find something and being amazed at the detail of the world they created, or my son and I are playing together and he doesn't see something, but I see it off on the corner of the screen because he's looking someplace else. It's kind of, it fits in that same type of, what was the Captain Toad treasure tracker, right? That you're kind of moving around within a puzzle box diorama, but there's a lot more movement and platforming in this. And it's just the game that it's made me feel like a kid as I'm playing it. And so that's why it ends up being my most fun game of the year. So Swiss, you have another game that is a PlayStation exclusive and one that you've been repping all podcasts long quietly with your t-shirt. So tell us about Kratos and Atreus and why God of War is your most fun game this year.
I'm actually going to dial it down just a hair. And after all that, this year it was kind of hard to pick. I love Nier Automata. I love BattleTech. I love God of War. But mostly it came down to like BattleTech. I felt like it was too much of a niche game to really, give it my overall nod. I know we shouldn't really call this our game of the year, but kind of feels that way. And then with Nier Automata, uh, I had to be a little bit more honest with myself, and it wasn't really a 2018 release. So that tipped the scales out of my 3 big games from the year that I enjoyed, and went towards God of War. That being said, I'm not saying it's not worthy of it, because I really enjoy the story. I enjoy Christopher Judge's performance as Kratos. Um, I love the Kratos and Atreus dynamic. He does not come across to me as an annoying side character that you have to keep alive. They did a good job with the well, they learned that you don't want to have to be babysitting the character. He never really I maybe I'm not far enough in the game to have that happen, but for the most part, he helps me. So that's good. And then just the storyline aspect of the father son. I have a son that's close to Atreus's age, so every now and then, like Atreus will do things and make little comments and stuff, and it's like, yeah, the guys that designed this game have sons themselves, and it's you know, it's a beautiful game. Yes, it's God of War. Yes, you still feel like they kind of guide you through the kill boxes as you refer to them, once DB, but uh, there's still enough exploration for me to be satisfied. And after an initial kind of stuttering with the combat, I've gotten uh, much more attuned to it. And the best thing about it, because if this had been a problem, this would not have been my most fun game. Uh, Compared to the original God of War, which I played earlier in the summer just to get to start getting myself familiar with the franchise, the quick time events have been greatly toned down. So it's much more of an action adventure title than like the pure action quick time stuff that I experienced when I played the original God of War. So as far as games that I think about, like when I'm looking forward to the weekend, which is when most of my time I can do some gaming is, uh, I am looking forward greatly to playing God of War every weekend, and I've had a lot of fun with it. So while I haven't had the highs of Horizon Zero Dawn and The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild like I did in 2017, um, Battletech, Nier Automata, and God of War have made this a pretty good gaming year for me, and I'll give a very slight 34% tip of the cap to God of War.
Nice. Yeah, well said. I agree with you. I think that there's a lot there, and it is um, definitely something that it may make my game that I wish I would have come back to when we start talking about those in 2019. Agassicles, you also have a spring game that came out that you have been coming back to time and again over the course of this year. So, what is your pick for the most fun game that you've played this year?
It would be Far Cry 5. For some reason, I felt like I was tempted to say Assassin's Creed, but yeah, it's Far Cry 5. It just kind of snuck up on me, and when I was away from the game for a while and realized like how much there is to do, like how much there is in terms of territory. Um, like I go back into the campaign and still get kind of surprised by things that come up. As far as your next mission that you should go to take down, or the NPCs that you encounter, and I think the game just gets a bit undersung. You know, last year, I don't remember. We may have all looked at this category as like the thing. If you were having a small cocktail party, right, the game you would pull out for other people to either, if not directly play, to watch you play. And I think, given the right, demographic in a room, that playing Far Cry 5 kind of as a destruction simulator, which is kind of how I thought about Just Cause 3 back in the day, might fill that bill. But at least, even if there's not as much destruction, there's a ton of things to tactically work through. And that is why, that game for me kind of has that same dopamine hit, but actually even more earned than like a racing game. Like if I bring it up for 15 to 20 minutes, I'm pretty confident that I'm always going to have fun. Whereas, when I bring up a lot of other games, Red Dead Redemption 2, I bring up Red Dead Redemption 2 for 15 minutes. There's no way in the world that I have any inkling that I'm absolutely certain, that I'm going to have fun in that 15-minute segment, or how long a segment I need to plan to feel guarantees that, I'm gonna engage with the game enough. That's not the case with Far Cry 5. Just drop into a territory that you don't own, right? And or wield influence over, and you're gonna have a ton of stuff to do. Even if it's just like harassing the cult, faction crew as they come by, like in a pickup truck. There's just a lot of stuff to do. Many of it becomes quite comical, and that's why it's my life of the party game for 2018.
Excellent. Yeah, definitely. It's been great to hear you kind of come talk about it as you've come back to it time and again. So this leaves us with you, Osiris Prime. Oh, wise bearded one. You have the final pick of the year. Your one is also, it ties right into what Agasicles was saying about gathering people around the TV and giving them a chance to have some fun together.
Yeah, so it's kind of ties in to the the very first category with a family game, and I kind of was betting around between this and Super Mario Party, but I ultimately chose Super Smash Brothers Ultimate. It's just I have a ton of fun with this. Once again, you got like almost 80 characters you can choose from, so you don't have you have plenty to choose. Different strategies. You got just straight up fighters. Punching and kicking. You got swords. You got Swiss, mentioned Kirby, you can do all these different things, and there's different modes. You can do the classic mode where you just pick one fighter and kind of fight through kind of a story, I guess, mode, sort of, so to speak. You have online, of course, you can go online and battle people. You have the spirit mode, which is there's two different modes within that section itself. So there's just a bunch of options. Once again, a little bit too much for my wife to get wrapped around, but I have fun, where I have all these things I can choose from. I kind of jump back and forth when I go into the spirit board, and just kind of do the spirit story mode, I suppose, if you want to call it, and just doing the straight up spirit board where every like 5 minutes or so you can pick a different spirit to try to unlock. So it's fun. I've always had fun with the Smash Brothers series, so it's always another great party game too that you can bust out and play 8 people. You can play 8 people against each other with this. I do think you need an adapter to, I think, so you can do the Joy-Cons and the remotes and all that, I think, but I'm not sure. I haven't done it.
I think it's, what is it, Bluetooth? Can you go up to 8? So you should be able to use it with the Joy-Cons.
Okay, yeah, I haven't had that many people to try it with, but I mean, either way, at least 8 people. You can have max 8 people that you can do local multiplayer. So yeah, that was my pick.
Great. So the fun games, our most fun games of the year: Astrobot Rescue Mission, God of War, Far Cry 5, and Super Smash Brothers Ultimate. Gentlemen, I'll be curious to see where Super Smash Brothers Ultimate lands when we come back after the new year, right? Is this a game that, because it just launched here in December, are we going to spend some time over the holiday break playing it with our families, with ourselves, what our rosters look like in terms of unlocks? Or is it something that is really, is it only fun when it is the life of the party with groups of people, or is it something that you can enjoy on your own as well? So we are wrapped up for our categories for this for 2018, gentlemen. This has been a heck of a year. We've had a ton of great discussions. When we come back in 2019, when we come back at the beginning of January, we'll have a chance to look back at the year that was, talk about, as we did last year, a number of kind of gaming headlines and stories and the state of the industry. We also got a couple categories here that we've saved in our back pocket, right? We've got that idea of, after all the award shows and announcements and websites have gone up, what is that game that is going to be out there in major media as referenced as pop culture? And some of that may be relatively easy, and there's lawsuits around it right now. But some of it may be other things. So we'll come back to that in January. We're also going to definitely come back to that idea of what games of 2018 that we're still playing, and which ones are we kind of regretting that we didn't play more now that we finally had a chance. Last year, Agasicles, you dove into Assassin's Creed Origins in the early part of 2018. And this was a 2017 game that I really loved. And you even mentioned that if you had a chance to play it a little earlier, that it might have been higher on your list. So we're going to come back in January and give us some time to talk about some things that maybe we just, they got pushed down our playlist. And now over our holiday break here, we have a chance to go back and revisit that. So, gentlemen, I have mentioned our holiday break for a couple different times. This is our last E2KG. This is our last Enough to Keep Going podcast for the year of 2018. We will take the next few weeks off here during our holiday break, and we'll be coming back in January for our show. We'll be back here. We will not be here on, I'm going to guess, not on New Year's Day, the Tuesday, the 1st. So maybe there might be a special podcast to celebrate the new year, but chances are we'll be back to our regular schedule on January 8th with our Tuesday night shows. So, gentlemen, any final thoughts, any closing arguments for things that you maybe felt got short shifted or you forgot to mention during all of our superlatives and our categories here? All right. No, I really, gentlemen, it is my honor to continue to have this conversation with you over the course of this year, and it is my honor to be able to engage and talk about what we love to do so much, and that is spend some time gaming with our friends and our family. So thank you. Prime, do you have some final thoughts there?
I just had one quick thing. I don't know if these categories would change after the sales that are going to be coming up in the next couple of weeks. So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, well, I think that is a good teaser to come on back, everybody. Come on back after the new year to the Enough to Keep Going podcast to see what we've been playing over the holidays and where our perspectives change. And encourage you, as you've made it through this monster Game of the Year podcast, to leave some comments below, engage us on social media. Let us know where we're totally off base or what are your hidden gems or life of the party as well. So for myself, DBQ Hams, Swisscar, Agasicles, and Osiris Prime, this has been Enough to Keep Going 2018, and we will see you next year. Good night.